Hey everyone, Joe here. Now, if you're listening to this show, I can probably safely assume that you are an SNES aficionado, and that's great. But some of you might have owned a PC during those heady days of the early 90s. And if you did, you might even have played some games on them. And if you did that, you might enjoy my podcast, The Upper Memory Block. In every episode, we go deep into a game or game series and talk about things like the story, the gameplay, and technical specs. But more importantly, we dive deep into the development of the games, what makes them special, and whether or not they still hold up today. So if all of that sounds interesting, come check out the Upper Memory Block podcast at umbcast.com. Thanks for your time, and now I'm proud to introduce the SNES podcast.
$200, a Super Nintendo setup costs twice as much as the old system. For the money, the company promises better pictures, sound, and adventure. Now you're playing with power, superpower. You're the king, I tell you! The king!
Only for Super NES. You're listening to the SNES broadcast with your hosts, Soul Blazer and George.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Super NES podcast. This is episode number 59 for your listening pleasure. This is one of your regular co-hosts, Greg, and I'm joined by my other regular co-host, George, who I always have to introduce because he refuses to introduce himself.
Well, I mean, if you just sit there in silence, how am I supposed to know?
Well, yes, we've gone through this already, so.
And we'll talk about this later.
Yes, one of these days I'll actually get you to properly introduce yourself, so like other podcasts do. But anyway, we are doing an interesting game like in this episode, a game that for a change neither George or I had played before in the past, but which came to us recommended by I don't know if they're a listener of the podcast, but I do know that a couple people have suggested we check this game out, and I can see why, because it's pretty interesting. We are covering the technically the vehicular combat-based racing game, Rock and Roll Racing, developed by a small company called Silicon and Synapse, now known by a much more famous name of Blizzard Entertainment, published by Interplay.
Sounds chilly.
And published by Interplay for both the Super NES and Super NES Land of Genesis in 1993. So it's been a while since we looked at a racing game. F-Zero was the last time I covered racing games. I kind of figured that we were due for it because Super NES did have a bunch of racing games for it. Most people are of the opinion that the more realistic /sim racing games are not very good in the system, that they're a lot better on Genesis. But some of the more offbeat, I guess you could kind of say arcadey racing games are pretty good for the system. For example, I think that the Super NES version of Ivan Stewart Off-Road Racing is very good. That's a very good arcade game that got ported very well with the system. So, and this definitely fits the bill of being kind of a zany and wacky and cartoony racing game for sure. So anyway, George has said before in the past that he's not really a big racing game fan, but you played some of them before, right?
I don't think that's true, but...
Well, I remember you saying, like, off mic that you really hadn't played too many racing games.
I don't think I've ever said that since I play, like, Forza Motorsport and all that.
Well, yeah, but those are more...
I play a decent amount of racing games.
But those are more modern racing games, right?
Okay, well, if we're talking about older racing games, yeah, no, I don't play too much of those.
But,
But
yeah.
I still play, like, even, like, older Gran Turismo and stuff like that. Anyway, yeah, what were you saying?
So you kind of prefer the more simulation racing games, like, as opposed to as opposed to more like arcade-based ones, then, right?
Yes, but I have no problem with arcade-based racing games. So, I had no problem playing this game.
Yeah, you know, I'm not a huge racing game fan, but there are a few racing games that I really love. I already mentioned F-Zero, like I'm a huge fan of the F-Zero franchise. Those are a lot of fun. I cut my teeth on RC Pro Am, like for the NES, which is a great game. The sequel is also very good. Very frustrating, very difficult, but a lot of fun to play. And you know, and so I already mentioned, like, you know, Ivan Stewart Off-Road Racing is a very fun game. Pole Position is one of the first arcade games I remember playing as a kid. The second game I think is better, but Pole Position is still like pretty fun to play. So it kind of depends upon the game. I kind of prefer, as opposed to George, I kind of lean more toward the action / arcadey stuff, but racing games definitely have a very long and long distinguished history, and you don't really need to know too much about. Well, for a lot of games, you really don't need to know too much about like racing or how cars operate or whatnot to be able to have fun playing them. So, in this game, I think is a kind of a great example. A great example for that. So, both the game and the company behind them have very interesting, histories. So we will camp out on the game here first, like for a moment. This game is actually a sequel to an earlier Super NES game. That was actually in hindsight, it kind of makes more sense. To talk about the company first. Silicon and Synapse was founded back in 1991 by three college graduates who just recently left school and decided to get together and form a video game company. Yes, it's been done numerous times in the past, and has been done with some success with a bunch of other companies. BioWare got its start in pretty much a very similar way and fashion as well.
Right, but those guys were doctors.
Right, but they were recent graduates also, like when they started the company.
Yes.
But these three guys got together and formed the company, and they formed a publishing agreement very shortly after they formed with Interplay, which was a very big PC and console game publishing company at the time. We've covered Interplay in past podcasts. I won't talk about them too much, but most of their early work was in doing porting of games to other platforms that the Interplay had published in the past. Battle Chess 1 and 2, Castles, Lord of the Rings, Shanghai 2, games like that. But they also but the company, of course, didn't want to just develop. The company didn't want to just port games forever. They also wanted to develop and make their own games. So the first game they published, the first game that they developed like on their own, and published for them by Interplay as per their contract, was a racing game called RPM Racing that came out with the Super NES alone in 1991, shortly after the console launched in North America. And that game's actually kind of a enhanced version of an earlier game called Race Instruction Set, which came out with the Commodore 64 back in the mid '80s. The logic and AI engine is kind of, I'm going to be courteous and say, if I can say, inspired by heavily by that game. You could perhaps make the argument that it was like borrowed because it's very, very similar, but in many respects, RPM is kind of a updated, enhanced version of racing, enhanced version like a racing, race instruction set. And that game's kind of similar to Rock and Roll Racing in some ways. It's more simplistic. It's more of a realistic racing game, so that you can have regular seasons or single races or make your own courses and just like and just go around the tracks and whoever comes in first wins, that kind of stuff. George the Fat Man Sanger did the music for the game, which is pretty good. The game did okay upon release, but I mean certainly it wasn't, it's not great. I don't think I played the game for a little while. I don't think it's anywhere near as good as this game is, but companies have to start somewhere. So they continued over the next few years to port games. They also the second game that they created on their own was a very popular game, which did very well, and which you may have played also, George. A little title called Lost Vikings.
Nope.
Okay. It's a very good. It's a very good puzzle game, kind of similar to a. It has a lot of similarities with a Lemmings. Like you played that game.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so very similar to that. That game got ported to a whole bunch of systems. 1992, there was a sequel for it. There was a sequel for it also later on. So yeah, that game did very well. So with that cash, the company decided to go ahead and make a sequel to RPM, which initially called RPM 2. But toward the end of the project, Interplay's marketing department got involved, and you can already hear the oh no kind of coming onto this, because whenever marketing gets involved in things, it usually doesn't work out too well. They liked the game a lot. They wanted to do well because they had confidence in they had confidence in SOCON and Synapse by now because of the good work that they had done with porting. They came up with a great idea of maybe having some, they looked at the very cartoony, kind of somewhat violent, kind of like off the rails, zany and bonky gameplay, and like hey, we should really get some music like to this game. So they went out and they secured the rights to a bunch of famous classic rock music. Well, most of them are classic rock music. We'll talk about here that later on. So they got the rights to add on five tracks, and to better suit the overall change of the game, the music gave it. They insisted upon a rename of the game, and the game got renamed to Rock and Roll Racing because you're racing, you're listening to rock and roll music. Like duh. It's kind of like self obvious there as what as when they do there. You do that. So, but they So the game also has a lot of similarities to RC Pro-Am, which I already mentioned earlier, because of the combat nature of the game, how you can use weapons against other players and that kind of stuff. So it definitely is equal to. The game's kind of like a half sequel, kind of like half borrowed kind of stuff. So it's a very interesting mishmash of ideas and previous game concepts, but it all works out pretty well, I think. So the game came out in North America on June 93. It was simultaneously launched on both the Super NES and Genesis, and it came out in Japan in January 94, and Europe got a power release of the game in March of 94. So and this was the last game the company did under its old name. They wanted to have a more exciting name, so they sometime early in 1994, the three guys who founded the company sold the company to a small distributor called Davison Associates for $6.75 million. And because of that purchase, the company was renamed briefly to Chaos Studios before finding out that somebody else already had that name active, so that's a no-go. And they finally set it upon Blizzard Entertainment. So very shortly after that, Blizzard really took off, like the breakthrough hit Warcraft, to Warcraft like Orcs and Humans. The first game in the very long-running Warcraft franchise. So, pretty much as they say, the rest is history after that point. The company's released numerous successful games over the years. Warcraft is still a very big franchise for them. Of course, they're still like World of Warcraft, which is the longest running and most successful RPG out there. There's also the very long-lasting and successful StarCraft and Diablo franchises, and the most recent biggest hit, was a game like Overwatch. And Blizzard changed hands numerous times. They finally ended up being owned by a French company called Vivendi, which is the same company. The company also acquired Sierra, and back in 2008, Vivendi Games did a merger with Activision, and but they didn't want to use Vivendi as the sub name of the company, so they said, hey, Blizzard sounds pretty good. So the new company was named Activision Blizzard, and because of that merger, and so true to this day, Activision Blizzard is actually larger than Electronic Arts to be the biggest, to be the biggest, most profitable video game company in the world. So, so kudos for them. And side note, the three guys who founded the company, I found to be very interesting. The three guys who founded the company are still at the company today. One is to one of the president, one is to one of the vice president, and the third guy was a former president and is now employed as a consultant. So I'm sure those guys have made their money over many times, and it's definitely a very great fairy tale rags to riches success story about taking a small company and making it the biggest company in the world. One of the biggest companies in the world, certainly. So, but knowing the history of the company and knowing the history of the game, it's pretty interesting. It's pretty interesting to see how this game came out, because it's a very early look at some things that Blizzard would do very well, I think, in later games. You have to see some similarities, for example, with this game and some of the things concepts that they would use in later games. Like, for example, the graphics. The graphics in this game are very cartoony. They're very like over the top, kind of zany fun. They're there's bright, vivid colors. It really kind of reminded me of this. I don't know if you have an experience, George, playing the early Warcraft games, but this really kind of reminded me of Warcraft games as far as the overall graphic look and the colors used and everything went.
They're not really my kind of games.
But you have seen them before, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely similarities in the graphics because, so they're very. I thought the graphics of the game were very good. They're very eye-popping. They're very vivid. There's a lot of good colors being used. Definitely taking advantage of the rich color palette. The Super NES was able to do. So, what do you think of the graphics?
Well, they definitely look nice. They're very welcoming, and I didn't really have to worry about what looked like what, except for the oil slick kind of looked like caltrops to me.
Yeah.
Just because of the shine. Yeah.
Right.
But I mean, you know that it's oil because it tells you it's oil.
Right.
I mean, what else can I say about how it looks? I mean, you basically said it all. It looks nice, it fits, it's cartoony for sure, but not super over the top. But it's not realistic.
Oh yeah. I mean, compared to the last game, RPM, this game was designed from the start not to be realistic at all. They definitely wanted to go for more of crazy cartoony action look feel to it. That holds down to the graphic. That holds down to the icons too, because the icons the basic gameplay of the game is a racing game. You have a racer, you have your car, you can pick so you can either like go through a series of maps, or just playing a single map, and the top of the screen, at the top of the screen, like while you race, it shows you how many missiles you have, how many mines you have, how many. I can't remember off the top of my head the third power-up is.
The oil slick.
The oil slicks, yes, thank you. And even those icons like are very like graphically looking, on like cartoony looking. So it shows you the laps that you have done. Like it's a very clean, very clean interface. I thought, like
simple but very effective.
Yes, exactly. Good. Yep, that's a very good way of putting it. The course design's interesting. The courses are laid out in very interesting patterns, I thought. They're not your typical oval or rounds or squares. And there's a very oddball courses here, I think. I definitely think there's some very, would you say, George, unique racetracks? Yeah, so.
Yeah. I found it interesting how, like, every turn was, like, a sharp turn.
Oh, yeah, I hate that. You really have to be careful, like, a bunch of momentum going on the sharp curves, especially if you have, like, somebody trying, like, especially if you have, like, an AI player, like, on your tail, but.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, you have weapons, like we mentioned, you have missiles, mines, and oil slicks. They pretty much do what they sound like. They pretty much do what the name implies. So,
are they missiles? I thought they were like lasers.
I kind of thought they'd be missiles, but I guess like it. But I guess it kind of operate in a very laser-like fashion. So
I guess. I mean, it's a projectile weapon.
Yeah, exactly. So, but the cars the cars in this game I thought actually the cars in this game I thought actually looked very similar to the cars the cars that you race against like an F-Zero. I thought there's some similarities in my mind at least. There's some similarities like how the cars those two games look.
I didn't see any of F-Zero in this game. I mean, to me the cars just looked like muscle cars but with huge wheels.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's a very good car design. I thought, like you can recognize like your car from your opponent's car very easily because of the car schemes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You can also see there's also a radar map in the corner that shows you like where you are versus versus where all the other players are. So
gives me some radar love.
Yes, radar is very important in a racing game. So. And there's the tracks have some hills and dips and George already mentioned the sharp curves. So I really appreciate the fact how there's also the fact one more thing about the graphics. There's some very nice background detail also. Many racing games just show simply the track and that's it, but this game shows you the map. It kind of shows you a course in a. I wouldn't call it isometric. I kind of call it kind of a slanted graphical view. I'm not really quite sure how to put it. Because you're not looking top down, but you're not looking from the side either. You're kind of like up a little bit, looking down looking down the track.
That's kind of isometric, I would think. That's how I would explain it.
Yeah, it's similar. It's not true isometric.
It's not true isometric, but it's more closely isometric than probably anything else.
So because of that graphical angle, you often see the you see stuff off the track also, like you see the terrain that you're going through and whatnot. So you can see like desert or mountains or lakes or whatnot as you go through the various tracks. That's very nice because most racing games they show you the track and that's it. So they didn't need to pay as much attention attention to the background graphics like in this game as they did.
I didn't even realize that stuff in the background until you said something about it. But you're right. That's pretty good. It's funny how I didn't notice it. I guess I was more worried about.
Yeah, you're so busy racing that you really don't really punch.
But it's really cool that they have something in the background because a lot of games don't have that.
Right.
So.
The only knock I might give about the graphics, and this kind of related to the game engine, I suppose, is that I kind of wish you had the option to be able to zoom in or zoom out your viewpoint a little bit, because I kind of think the default viewpoint doesn't show you as far back in the racetrack. Like I personally personally, personally prefer it too, because
Yeah, I wish I was able to see more ahead of me,
yeah,
because then it would be easier to brace for turns.
right, and you don't see and you don't get too much warning when the car comes up behind you either because of that.
Yeah.
But it's not game breaking by any event.
Oh no.
Right. Well, that's a minor aggravation. I mean, just something that, again, the time period, time period that this came out, that kind of limited viewpoint, a viewpoint was pretty common, for racing games.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure it was also a choice of there'd be a lot more to render.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So
yeah. Oh yeah. This game definitely pushes Super NES hardware because I didn't have any slowdown during the racetrack, but I kind of thought you can tell there's a little bit of loading time in between like tracks and whatnot. You definitely could tell that this game is pushing the hardware. So, but all in all, I thought it ran pretty smoothly.
Yeah, no, I didn't have any problems with any frame rate or anything.
So, so what do you think about the controls?
They're good. They're nice and tight. I didn't have any problems with them. I like how you can alternate between using the shoulder buttons and the D-pad to steer.
Yep. That's pretty unique. I can't really think of any other racing games that do that.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, there are some games they use it as like a different thing. Like it won't steer, but it'll like control. Like in F-Zero, it'll like control the the whatever, the rudder, whatever in the back. But yeah, no, you're right. I haven't really seen too many games utilize the shoulder buttons for like an alternate way to like steer or anything.
Yeah, I didn't use that feature. I'm just used to using the pad for everything, so I just kept using the pad.
Yeah, that's what I used. It was probably harder for me to use the shoulder buttons because I don't know. It feels different, and I'm also using like different fingers for it. Like I'm not using my thumb, and then you get into like reaction time and all that stuff.
I kind of wish the game had an option for a joystick because I kind of think a modern thumbstick, for example, might be able to handle the controls better than the overall control of the game better than a D-pad. But
yeah, because you'd be able to make more sensitive steering.
Right. So yeah, it takes getting used to. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good, I thought.
Yeah, it works.
So. Right.
I found myself power sliding through like every turn.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. So I assume that you had the same thing. Yeah. And it didn't look like the AI did that though.
You can use power sliding like your advantage though, because you can use power sliding to be able to kind of because some of the curves are so sharp, particularly if particularly those 90-degree curves, that power sliding is a good way to help you get around it.
Yeah.
But there's definitely some strategy like this game. I don't think we mentioned that there's there's quote unquote only like four cars on the racetrack. This is low compared to many of the racing games, but I kind of think again because the graphical model being used, because of the hardware being pushed, that 4 is where all they felt that they could reliably put in the game before it starts any slowdown or whatnot. So
right, and those sprites are big. So.
Yep, big cars.
Yeah.
So very satisfying, like when they go boom though.
Yeah, no, definitely, especially when it's by you.
Yeah.
Actually, we didn't talk about this, but when you first start, you could select a character, and they're from different planets.
Yes.
And each character adds different stats to your car or whatever. So, like the first one, which is the one I chose, like added I believe acceleration and top speed. I was like,
right.
Yeah, So
Right.
they had different things like I think handling and
Right.
this and that. And so that was a really cool feature.
Yep. So each race has 4 laps. 4 laps is a little bit long. I kind of wish that like I would personally, I would have preferred like 2 or 3 laps. But
I mean, the tracks are short.
yeah, I mean, the races themselves are not they're not too long, but just like some of the tracks are very frustrating. I thought because of the way they're designed and laid out and whatnot, and I just kind of wish that I'd like hold. Like I'll be in first place in like lap 2, and I'm going like I have to hold this like 2 laps. Damn. But so
Well, that's when you start dropping oil spills everywhere.
yeah. There's the game really encourages you to attack other vehicles also, more so than like RC Pro-Am, for example, because you get monetary attack bonuses each time that you provide the finishing blow against the car.
Yep.
And you also get a lapping bonus whenever you gain a full 1 lap lead, like your opponent during the race. And combined with the fact that money power-ups pick up, it definitely helps you to increase your bank, because in between because like with Ivan Stewart and like with some other racing games, like between the tracks, you can spend your money to upgrade your car. So you can get like better engines, better tires, better shocks, like a better shielding. And you can also increase the capacity to have more weapons. And you can also increase the number of times you can turbo boost with either jump jets or nitro boosts. Each of those upgrades can max out at 7.
Yeah, and it's really cool to have an upgrade system, because if you want to just go for speed, you just keep upgrading your engine.
Right.
And I'm assuming tires were like
Yeah.
grip and handling and all that.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It's my understanding that tires are used for gripping. Engines are used for speed. Plus also acceleration. Tires are used for gripping. Shocks are used to be able to allow you to be able to do the to be able to the bumps and jumps better. And shielding allows you to be able to take like more damage.
Yeah, I should have probably upgraded my shocks, because there's a few tracks where it's like, whoa,
I emphasize
I'm losing
engines.
a lot of speed.
Right? Yeah. I emphasize engines. Do the engine at first.
Oh yeah, I did that too.
Like and then shielding. Tires was second. Shielding was third. But then finally shocks. I try to keep it somewhat balanced, but I definitely before the start of the game, I definitely emphasized like engines, because speed equals good basically.
Well, that's good for any racing game.
Right.
Speed is good.
You can also, I'm not sure if you ever did this, George. You can also buy more advanced advanced vehicles too if you want to. The downside of that, though, you lose over. The downside of that, your equipment upgrades don't carry over.
Right. And no, I didn't buy a new vehicle. I just kept upgrading the one I had.
Right. So you have to, like most racing games, as long as you come in first, second, or third place, you're considered to have quote unquote qualified. I suppose is the best way to describe it. And you're awarded money and points. You need points to be able to advance like the next racing division. There's 2 racing divisions, like two racing divisions of each planet. If you don't have enough points, by the time the division race season is done with, you have to repeat the division again with 0 points, but your upgrades carry over, which is nice.
Oh, that's good.
There's also 2-player mode where you and a friend can race simultaneously, before I bring up this point, let's also bring up the announcer. There's an announcer in this game with some very zany voice samples. How would you describe this announcer, George?
I don't know. He's an announcer. He's like kind of like one of those over the top stereotypical announcers. Yeah, but the problem was, and it's understandable why, but the problem is with the announcer is there's not enough content to him, so he gets so repetitive, and and if you're constantly in first place, he'll say the same thing over and over and over again. Snake is dominating the race. Like, yes, okay, you said this like 3 other times, like this same lap. Thank you.
Yeah, I know, but
It's good information though.
Yeah.
Like if you don't know what's going on behind you, it's good information though. It's like, oh, so and so is close to blowing up, or whatever he says, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's helpful, but it's also annoying.
It's the same problem that any kind of like sports game kind of has, because limited size like to the game, so they only have like so many voice samples present. So
right, this is a problem of older games, and they're starting to weed that stuff out in newer games, but there are some games that still get very repetitive, and I'm not gonna name any names.
Yeah. So the Commodore's name is Loudmouth Larry, and it definitely applies because he's a loudmouth for sure. So
yeah, that sounds about right.
The voice quality in this game I thought is very good.
Yes.
But for being like being 16-bit title, again, this is a trademark of Blizzard. The Warcraft games and Diablo games also would also feature like very zany, over the top voices in them too. So again, you definitely can tell this. You definitely can tell this is a Blizzard game, and you definitely can tell they cut their teeth with many of the things that they do later on, like in their other games here. So that's pretty interesting.
I mean, it's not a surprise that there's good voice samples in here. It's nice to I was gonna say see it, but you don't really see voice, do you? It's really good to hear it. I mean, you need to remember that SNES has more capacity in the cartridges now, and the sound hardware is much more capable of doing voice than the NES was.
Right.
So it's always a delight to hear voice in an NES game. An SNES game is not always super surprising, but when you hear it and it's done well, it's a nice thing to have.
Yes.
Yes.
This is a very talky game too. There's only really, I think, this is probably one of the most voice-laden Super NES games I can think of. There's a couple others. There's a couple of sports games and there's Smash TV that also have a lot of voice in them, but this game's definitely up there too as far as the amount of voices.
Oh, yeah.
There's pretty much like one primary voice, but there are.
But there's a lot of clips that are being played.
Exactly. Yeah. So, so 2-player mode. Going back to the point I was going to make earlier, there's kind of a half backhanded rib here because. In 2-player mode, if only one person has enough points, points to advance on your division, the announcer will say, the announcer will ask you, like, you want to, the announcer will ask you, you want to quote, leave your loser friend behind. So, and if you say yes, then you basically kick your player, you'll kick your friend out of the game, and you continue like by yourself. Where you say no, then you go back and redo the track with him to make sure to help your friend get enough points.
I'm sure there was a lot of fights between brothers.
Could have been, yeah.
And a lot of crying to mom about it.
Right. This game has something that you hate, George: passwords.
I don't hate passwords. I hate terrible passwords. And this password system's alright, I guess. I didn't really need to worry about it because modern technology allows me to not worry about it.
It's an okay password. It's okay. You get a password each time you finish. I mean, a password that you finish each time a racing season, and of course, all those passwords are available like online these days.
Oh, of course.
The password consists of three 4-digit sections. So it's like XXXX, Space XXX, like how it's like set up. It's a very complicated system. So complicated, as a matter of fact, that that this day people have not been successful at being successful at perfectly cracking the password system during this game.
Huh.
They've only had partial success because because everything's saved like in the password system. So there's also it also saves your money, saves your power up, saves your difficult, saves your difficulty setting. There are we didn't mention that. There's 3 difficulty levels like this game. There's 3 difficulty levels like in the game. Rookie, warrior, like warrior and veteran. The AI definitely gets nastier and tougher at the higher difficulty levels.
That
They're
makes
much
sense.
more. Yeah, the cars upgrade easier. They're much more apt to use weapons on you. They're much better racers, that kind of stuff. So,
Right.
Finally, last but definitely not least, one of the best things about this game, I thought, and one of the reasons that Interplay Marketing wanted to change the name of the game. There's licensed music in this game. They got the rights to 5 classic. Well, most of them are classic rock and roll songs that were redone, like for the game, in MIDI format, and they sound pretty good, I thought, considering the limitations of their hardware, because Super NES, as we know, has a very good sound chip, and considering when the game was made, and considering the technology that was used to make the that was used to put the songs over, they're immediately recognizable.
Oh yeah.
You definitely can tell what they are like right away, and they really helped to add the. It was a very good choice, I thought, adding that music to add that music to the game, because the music fits the overall look and feel of the game very well. Because many games just have like standard but like boring, well, maybe not boring, just kind of like just regular game music, but. This game prides itself on kind of being zany and over the top and cartoony, and having rock music to battle by. I thought was a very good fit.
Yeah.
So, what do you think about the music, George? Did you find the quality of the songs to be okay?
Yeah, no, it was pretty good. I think there's only one song I didn't recognize.
I probably know which song it is that that you didn't place. So
It's like, oh, it sounds familiar, but like, what is this?
the Super NES version of the game has 5 songs. The Genesis version actually has like one more song on it.
Oh, well, excuse me.
But most people have commented. Most people have commented that they've commented the music sounds better. Sounds better the Super NES version of the game. So that's a trade-off. Which songs did you recognize? Like, do you remember?
Well, there's Highway Star. There's Bad to the Bone.
Yep.
Oh, geez, I forget the other 2 that I recognized.
Highway Star was performed by. Highway Star was performed by Deep Purple, and and Bad to the Bone was by who did that song?
I don't even remember.
Yeah, but there's also Paranoid.
Oh yes.
Which is a Black Sabbath song.
Right.
And there's also Born to Be Wild.
Yep.
Yep.
I think that was the first one I recognized. Actually, right. My memory sucks.
The last song is a curious pick because it's not really a classic rock song, but it is classic. It is the last song is the Peter Gunn theme, which was used in a TV show like in the '60s. And trivia question, George: the Peter Gunn theme was also used like another famous racing video game. Like, do you know what that game is?
No idea.
Spy Hunter.
I never played Spy Hunter.
Yeah, great game. Definitely a classic. Spy Hunter uses the Peter Gunn theme like all the way through. So I think the version of that song in that game sounds a bit better to me. But the version the version here is like pretty good. So, for the record, the 6th bonus song the Genesis version has is Radar Love. Which
That's so great because I don't know if you realize, but I made a joke earlier in this podcast, and I did not know that song was in the Genesis version.
Yeah, it's by a band called Golden Earring, which I never heard of. So, the music sounds very, very good. I was very impressed by it. It's higher quality than I ever expected, and also very.
It sounded great.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the first games to have licensed music in it. So this game, curiously enough, was ported to Game Boy Advance in 2003. I do not know how the quality of that game is. It looks to be okay. So it also does not include the licensed music because the license, of course, by then like to run out to use it. And the Game Boy Advance version also has a also allows saving on the card as opposed to having to use a password system. Beyond
of course,
that,
it's a Game Boy
right.
game.
So beyond that's pretty much the same. Very curiously enough, in 2014. Blizzard, through its Battle.net's online system, added in a demo version of the game, playable on the PC, which features the first, features like 3 tracks of the game, and is emulated through like SNES, with the music again changed to the same MIDI music that the G-Baby version used. Why they did this, I have no idea, because it's kind of like I don't really fully understand why they did this. Especially places the game's not complete. Maybe it's kind of like somebody was trying to cut their teeth and gain some programming experience porting older games over. Maybe they wanted to celebrate their heritage by a little bit. Who knows? But it was very interesting. There was a sequel to this game that made. There was a sequel. The sequel came out several years later for the PlayStation.
Yay!
The game was sold in Europe as Rock and Roll Racing 2, with the subtitle of Red Asphalt. But for some reason in the US they dropped the sequel part and just called it Red Asphalt.
That's weird.
I'm not sure why, because so Interplay published this game also. It's still a Blizzard developed game. It's kind of similar to the first game. It looks like it's more of a comic book comic book style. The character profile and videos, and there's also RPG aspects present in the game, how you upgrade your characters, driving combat skills. So I checked out video of the game on YouTube. It looks pretty good. Maybe not as much fun as the first game, but a decent game. So we may cover it eventually like another podcast. There is a spiritual sequel to this game also available currently. Currently right now. A small company called Yard Team back in December 2013 published a game called Motor Rock.
I remember this stuff.
It's very, very similar to Rock and Roll Racing.
Yeah.
Many of the same art assets and characters are carried over, and there's also some additional content they added on also. The game started originally in 2009, was crowdfunded, like an Indiegogo, and it was originally named Rock and Roll Racing 3D, like when it came out. Within 7 days later, 1 week later, no shock, Blizzard put a cease and desist order on them because of the game, due to how close to their closely copying the original game that it was. So here's the curious thing about this game, though. The game is not available in the Steam store. You can't buy it that way. However, the game is still available. However, the game is still available on Steam, which what you do now if you want the game, like you go to the Yard Team website and by the Steam key there directly to like the game directly from them. Like and you go to Steam and plug the key and like unlock the game that way. So, curious way to get around it.
Indeed.
So yeah, if you enjoyed this game, check out Motor Rock. It sounds pretty good. So, I do not know how much the game costs. I probably should have looked at it, but it's kind of cool to show somebody thought of this game well enough to want to make a spiritual sequel for it. The game reviewed pretty well when it came out. AGM actually went so far as to give it their award for the best gaming, the best console racing game of the year.
Wow.
Like 1993. So, but it didn't get a very big print run. So as a result, this game is kind of expensive. We'll talk about pricing here in a moment. But the challenge of this game overall I thought was pretty good. I didn't have to. The early part of the game, I breezed through. I breezed through it fairly easily. Later courses, I had to repeat a couple of them, but since your money and power-ups carry over, I didn't mind that too much because, at least you feel like you're making progress that way. Because, I have to redo this course, but hey, my power-ups carried over, so it's all cool. So I'll actually be so I have a better chance. The game does a very good job of making the player feel the game does a very good job of making the player feel empowered. That you're actually making progress. Regardless of the fact whether you actually are or not, because the fact that stuff does carry over. It encouraged you to keep going, I thought. It's definitely very... What's the phrase I want to use? Definitely very challenging without being frustrating, I suppose. I suppose the way I'd put it. What do you think about the overall challenge and difficulty curve and that kind of stuff?
It's challenging enough. It's not overly frustrating, which is a good thing. I don't have too much to say about it.
What do you think about the games that replay live? Is it this something that you think should be can I go back to?
Maybe. Replay value for this game. I mean, I guess if I want to go and see the other cars, that adds a replay value. I didn't play with a second player, so I mean that's probably also a different experience in itself.
Yep, I imagine so too. Yep,
yeah, so I'd say the replay value is not the best, but it's good enough to bring somebody back to the game and still enjoy it.
Right. So yeah, I mean, you know what you're doing, and the game's not overly long. There's a let's play on YouTube the game from start to finish. Which guy did the whole game in just under 4 hours. So, but normal play of Passwords, I'd probably say about maybe 15-20 hours of gameplay here, probably. So
really,
yeah. Because like I said, those later courses get very nasty. And you're probably gonna have you're probably gonna have to re-race those a few times. But yeah, I mean, so for another racing game, I think this game's very good. It's not unique. Like I said, this game just borrow a lot from other titles. But I thought this game, I see why this game is fondly remembered and recommended. It's a very good racing game. The action, the over-top zany, cartoony feel, the nice music, the voices, the attack style, the gameplay, it all comes together very well. To make a very challenging, very fun racing game. I don't like it as much. I don't enjoy it as much as say RC Pro-Am or the F-Zero games. But still very, very good, and it's definitely interesting to see a very early Blizzard game because so much of this game that carried over to their later games, their graphical style and voices and philosophy. Their game philosophy, I definitely can tell is present here. it's very fascinating to look at the early games to see how they cut their teeth and kind of how they carried over to the many successful big titles in the 20 plus years since then.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate any on those? Elaborate any like those closing thoughts, George?
I sure can. It's a very nice game to play. It's not overly frustrating, like I said before, and the controls are tight. And, I mean, it's also one of those games that gives you a second way to steer your vehicle, which is always nice. I don't know how fun it is with a second player, but I'm sure it's probably more fun than playing by yourself. Unless the second player bogs you down, then that's a problem.
Yeah.
But it has a great art style to it.
Yeah.
You know, the characters look nice, and I like the addition of each character has their own stats that they add to basically how your car works. The upgrade system is a nice thing to see, and really makes you want to work for first place, because then you get more money, and then that makes you able to make your car faster, or have better handling, or have more armor, this and that. So, it's a good game.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. If you enjoy racing games, I definitely recommend checking this out. Even if you're not a racing fan, I think there's enough, like, there's enough like action present in the game with the whole blowing up your enemies and trying not to be blown up, and just the licensed music and the voices and everything. There's enough here, I think that you definitely. I can't guarantee that you're gonna love it, but I definitely recommend checking it out. Because I think it's a very, it's not your, to the game's credit, is that it's not a traditional racing game. So, like, I think anybody can pick this up and enjoy it. Especially like you're a fan of Blizzard and the games they produced over the years. This was definitely worth checking out, just to see how the company got its start. Some like early games. So
It's a fun little game.
there are a number of codes and glitches in this game. There's a way to get a secret racetrack in versus mode. There's a code you can enter like on the planet. There's a code you can enter like on the planet selection screen for that. There's a secret character in the game, Olaf, that you can access like in the character select screen. All these codes are available like online if you're curious. There's a glitch in the game that allows you to start the game on the same car and money. To do that, you play the game normally, get a good car, equip it, get some money, then go to the option screen, take the password, then take then start a new game in the same skill level. Choose a driver. Choosing driver or car. Go to the option screen and take the password, and then start a two-player game with this passwords. They can put both passwords and kill the second player, and you get double money and double cars, bonuses basically.
Wow.
There's also another secret character in the game that you can unlock like a password. It's also possible to access a sound test. To do that, in the option screen, turn off Larry. Then using either A, B, X, or Y, turn Larry back on and keep holding down that button. Then then push L, and you hear a different sound than Larry. And then from there, I can go through the sound test. So, like I mentioned, this game did not have a very huge run, even though it did review well. So it's a little bit pricey. It's not as pricey as some of the more really rare Super NES games, but it definitely is kind of up there, kind of the higher end for the higher end pricing games to buy. There were 25 copies of the game currently available for sale on eBay. with 84 copies that they recently sold. These are all North American versions. Prices include shipping. Very easy to find. Most of these listings like on card only form. Pricing ranged quite wildly on this. Anywhere from $20.50 all the way up to $64.
Wow.
So yeah, like I said, pricey, the higher end Super NES games, but not the most expensive game out there. There definitely are some there definitely are some games that I've covered before in the past that definitely they definitely go for like more money. But if you want expensive CIB copies, that's where you go. Yeah, that's where you get to open up the wallet for, because there's only 3 copies, CIB complete copies that sold recently, box, manual, and game, whatnot. One sold for $86, one sold for $98, and one pristine copy of the game, practically brand new. It's like, this included all the inserts, this included the plastic bag that the plastic baggie that the cart was in, everything, just like, literally almost like brand new, just the fact it was just opened up. So for a whopping $154.
Jeez. Speaking of opening the wallet, more like opening the checkbook.
Yeah. So $30. Unless you're a huge fan of the game, I can't really recommend paying $30 for it. The GBA version of the game, I'm sure is like I'm sure is available like for cheaper. So
possibly.
I didn't check. I didn't check. I didn't think to look up GBA pricing, but definitely worth checking this game out, like via like emulation or and the remake of the game sounds pretty good too. So I'm definitely interested in checking out both that version and also like the sequel, like Red Asphalt, like the PlayStation, to see how those 2 games fare.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to take a look at those.
So anyway, thank you very much again for joining the podcast. I would very much appreciate it. Definitely a very different racing game. Definitely a game that, definitely a game that, like I said, George and I did not have experience playing, but Kim recommended, and I can see why Kim recommended it. It's pretty fun. So it's definitely a very good pick up and play game. Also, I think it's like because the tracks not too long. This is a game you can play for like a half an hour or so and actually make some progress on it. So definitely a game you don't need to sink a whole bunch of time into unless you want to sink a whole bunch of time into. So that's always a mark of a good game.
Yeah, I agree.
So anyway, next in the podcast we're going to be looking at another. We're going to be looking at a very interesting game again next time. A sequel to a game that probably nobody's probably heard of the sequel, but the original game was based off of. Speaking about sequels, the original game is probably very, very well known. I know it's well known and well loved among a whole bunch of fans of retro community, especially those players who had an Amiga growing up, because this was the original game was a very popular Amiga game. We're going to be looking at at a very early Super NES game called Wings 2 Aces High, published by Namco, which is a semi-sequel to the popular cinema horror game Wings, which published by Cinemaware, like I said, like the Amiga of the 90s. Probably nobody knows this game exists, so this should be very interesting to look at again. I played this game back when it first came out. I've not played in 25 years. So it's gonna be fascinating to go back to this game and see how it holds up today. And George was not aware of this game, as I'm not surprised. So this should be interesting.
Yep.
So we appreciate everybody taking the time to listen to this podcast. We welcome feedback, comments, suggestions, that kind of stuff. Doesn't matter how old it is. Like any kind of game is fine, or whatnot. we also welcome like any Super NES stories or history of the system or anything else like that. If you have any stuff, by all means, feel free to send it in, and we'll share on the podcast. You can reach us on our Facebook page, or you can also send us an email directly to the SNESpodcast@yahoo.com. George, how can the good listeners get a hold of you if they're so inclined?
Oh boy, I'm on Twitter if you want to follow me. That's at Mr. Chief at MISTURCHEEF. If you're also interested, I stream games, old, new, whatever. That's twitch.tv/Mr. Chief, spelled the same way as the Twitter handle. I do other podcasts as well. I do The Box Fort, not family friendly. I do PlayStation Power with Greg, which is not family friendly. And I do Master System Masterpieces. And those are all fun.
Very good. Yes, we are also a proud member of both the Retro Junkies and the Throwback Network. Definitely feel free. There's a lot of great retro and non-retro podcasts on there, so definitely check them out. We're also available on iTunes, so feel free to check us out on there and give us a rating review. I'm still working on getting Stitcher up and running again. I'm having some issues with that. I keep forgetting about that. Maybe George can remind me that I need to keep working on that, because I've been kind of going email bouncing hell through with them. So
Hey Greg.
Not right now. Yeah, so I'm working on it still.
How about Google Play? You should work on that.
I keep forgetting it. Yeah, I keep forgetting to submit it, actually.
Oh.
To be honest, I need to do that too. So anyway, yeah. We very much appreciate the support. We're working again. I'm getting some more guest host to come on the podcast, and we got some special episodes in mind later on. So stay tuned for all that stuff. And thank you again very much for listening. Hope you enjoyed the podcast, and take care, all.
Bye.
Nintendo controls 80% of the video market. But no matter how you play the game, or which game you play, things definitely have come a long way since Pac-Man. Now you're playing with power. Doom Bomb.